Okay. For all of you who decided to join us this evening, my name is Maddie Zahach. I'm the Assistant Village Manager for the Village of Ossining, and we have quite a team here assembled to talk about what we are calling Project Mover, which is a project that's being worked on the village's behalf by a very expert team who you'll hear from in just a moment. But basically the goal is to make sure that e-bikes are within reach of all those who work, live, and play in the village of Ossining. And an e-bike, for those who are unfamiliar, is basically a bike that requires charging, sort of like your cell phone or an electric car, because it gives you a little bit of boost when you ride around on one of these bikes, which would be great for us here in Ossining, because as you know, we have an awful lot of hills. So we want to make sure that this is something that our community wants, and it's something that's designed in exactly the way that we want it. We are competing for a $7 million prize under a nice sort of program. And the feedback that we get from you all today is going to be integral in designing the system that we want. And so at that, I will turn it over to the team from Nelson Nygaard, Acton, and Eno Energy. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great, thank you, Maddie. Just as a reminder, this meeting is going to be recorded. So if you are okay with that, please stay on the line. If you are not okay with that, you can also attend an in-person meeting that's going to happen on April the 23rd. I'd also encourage you to keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking, but unmute yourself when you are speaking, just making sure that we are able to speak clearly and hear everyone that is talking. As Maddie had mentioned, we have a great team assembled here today, including folks from Nelson Nygaard, which is a consulting firm that I work for. We have a group from Eno Energy that is leading the project. And then Acton is the solution provider, or the e-bike vendor that is going to be providing the e-bikes for the village of Ossining if we are awarded the prize. Before I go any further, we do have a call for Stannis interpretation. So I'm going to invite Maria and Luis to make a statement.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es María Ávila y estoy aquí por si necesitan servicios de interpretación. Solo levanten la mano y yo estaré aquí para asistirles, igual que Luis. Mucho gusto, bienvenidos.
Gracias.
Is there...
Oh, sorry, sir. Buenas tardes, disculpen, no sabía que tenía que hablar. Mi nombre es Luis, soy el intérprete, es un placer tenerlos acá con nosotros, estamos a sus servicios. Vamos a hacer la interpretación de español, de inglés al español. Estamos acá para servirles, nos vamos a mover en otro grupo. María y yo estaremos al pendiente de servirles. Muchas gracias. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Maria and Luis. So Luis, do we have anyone that is going to be requiring a breakout? Luis?
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone that's going to require a breakout?
I haven't seen anything.
Me neither. So.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll stay on the line for now. If someone joins that requires interpretation services, then we'll create the breakout room at that point. Does that sound okay?
Let me remind them. Querida familias, vecinos, si necesitan interpretación, por favor, levanten la mano o pónganlo en el chat que necesitan interpretación y nosotros vamos a abrir otro cuarto separado para servirles entre María y yo ahí en ese cuarto separado. Recuerden, levanten la mano o déjenos saber en el chat si necesitan interpretación. Muchas gracias. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Luis. All right. Well, why don't we dive into the presentation? We're going to give a brief summary about this project, how it came to be, and where we hope the project to go in the future. Again, my name is Evan Costoliola. I'm a project planner as part of Project Mover. Very excited to be connecting with you today about the project. And just to get us started, wanted to let you know that this isn't a new idea. This is about a year or two in the making, starting with the mobility and parking study that the Village of Ossining had produced that ended in June of 2021. As part of that process, which included public engagement, it was clearly identified by the public that mobility is one of the critical challenges that's facing the Village of Ossining today. A lot of that has to do with the transportation options that are not available or available today. Also, the topography of the village makes it really difficult for folks to get around anywhere but other than a car. Transit is, it's an option for people to get around the village. It's also an option for people to get up and down Westchester County, but it is infrequent and it is indirect. And so there's a really strong call for people to get access to more and better non-auto options, whether that is to get into downtown, connect into Metro North, or connect to other parts of the village. During that process, e-bikes and a few other mobility solutions were identified as potential ideas that should be explored to better connect people to parts of the village, as well as to traverse the hills that are throughout Ossining. And so what happened after the mobility and parking study is the Village of Ossining identified NYSERDA's Clean Transportation Prize as a potential funding opportunity to actually build out an e-bike system. NYSERDA is short for the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, and they have developed a program where they can fund up to 3 communities of $7 million grand prize for an electric mobility system or project. And so that's what we're going after right now. This is to ultimately be awarded a $7 million grand prize within the Electric Mobility Challenge part of the Clean Transportation Prize. We are in the beginning phases of the project planning. We submitted an initial application for the Clean Transportation Prize. We were selected as one of the 7 top finalists. And so 3 of the 7 finalists could be awarded that $7 million prize. And ultimately what Project Mover is, which is the name of the project that we're advancing, ultimately it is to give people access to electric bikes, whether you're a resident or a visitor. We want to make sure that you have readily accessible, you have proximate access to an electric bike. We want to make sure that people that don't want to drive or want to drive less have access to a clean mobility option such as electric bikes. We think that this is going to do several different things for people within the community. That includes reducing traffic, ensure that you can get around and zip by traffic, especially during the peak traffic times. We want to make sure that you can reduce your household transportation costs, or the costs that you typically incur on a monthly basis on transportation. We want to give people better access to jobs, to social activities, connect to groceries, connect to many of the places that it's very difficult to get to right now. And we also want to create new ways to create partnerships, not only within the Village of Ossining, but also some of the other river towns immediately north and south of the Village of Ossining. There's a really strong component that is of this project that is connecting underserved communities to better and clean mobility options. And we're hoping to continue to work with low-income and immigrant communities within the Village of Ossining and areas just outside of the village. So what does this, or what might this look like? So there's 2 main components that we're developing as part of Project Mover. First is the development of an electric bike share system, which would create a fleet of accessible bicycles where you can check out a bicycle at one point, ride it to another point or to your destination, and dock it. There would be docking stations located conveniently across the village at places that you want to go. And so the point is so that you have access to a docking station within, you know, a 5-minute walk at most. So that's one of the elements. The second.
Evan, before you go on, I wonder if you might address how you'll be taking questions during the presentation because some hands are up.
Oh, yeah. I will take some questions in about 2 minutes. There's a couple pieces that I'll get through and then we can answer some questions.
And I also noticed that there are two maybe persons needing translations and interpretation, but I'm informing you that we'll have a break room for Spanish speaking people in case you have questions too.
Okay, do we want to just really quickly create that breakout room? I think it's a good idea to set that up right now. Monique, can you create the breakout room? Do you have the names of the folks that need interpretation services?
Is it you, Miriam and Marcela? Miriam Gavilanes and Marcela Briones. Do you need a Spanish translation?
They have their hands up.
Great, let's do that. Monique, so Monique is going to be setting up the breakout room real quick. Marcela and Miriam will get you going in there, and then Drew's going to be doing the presentation in that room. Great. All right, so they are off into their breakout rooms, and we're on to the rest of the presentation. So as I mentioned, there are two major components of this. There's the bike share system component that I just described. And then there's a new way to get access to affordable electric bicycles, and that is a lease to own program. And so the point of the lease to own program is to give people access to their own bike that they will eventually own by basically doing a very low cost monthly payment program that would include the cost of helmet, bike lock, it would include the cost of maintenance, and then a couple other services. It's all inclusive. And so that would be done so you have your own bicycle if you don't want to use the bike share option. So those are two main elements. There are some supportive investments that would be tied into Project Mover. That includes creating new safe places to ride, so better bike infrastructure. That includes the development of more public bike parking in addition to the docking stations so that you can park bikes wherever you really want. It includes access to free helmets and bike locks. And then finally, there's going to be a whole component of Project Mover where people get access to bike education, where you can learn how to ride an e-bike and navigate safely on village streets, as well as maintenance support. So there's a lot of components that are tied into this project. We are working with the community to collaboratively design what Project Mover will eventually look like, where bike stations will be located. It will indicate where there might be additional support for better bike infrastructure so you can safely ride across the village. And it also will impact or influence the design of the lease to own program. So there's many different options to get your voice heard and ensure that this system is truly designed for you. And it starts today during this conversation. We are also working with paid community partners that we'll be formally announcing very soon. But the intent of working with community partners is to bring them into the planning team. So it's not just the three named partners, it's also community members are actually helping to design the system themselves. They're getting paid to do that. And that includes everything from helping site the bike share stations, facilitating community conversations, and helping design the supportive programmatic elements like bike education, maintenance programming, and how you might disseminate things like bike locks and helmets. I'm going to stop here for now. Do we have any questions before we move on? No questions? Okay. All right. So we'll move on. So I also wanted to make it really clear that Project Mover is not a standalone project. The way that this is being designed is to fully complement, especially the downtown revitalization initiative, the DRI. So everything that is being designed as part of Project Mover is going to fit in really nicely with the work that the village is doing on DRI. That includes ensuring that we are connecting people via e-bike to DRI funded investments and some of the, or many of the amenities that would be funded through the DRI. We would be connecting people to and from the DRI waterfront enhancements. We would be making a much stronger connection between areas outside of Main Street and the downtown area, and ensure that e-bikes help facilitate access. And then finally, DRI is going to have a ton of new programming and events, and e-bikes are just perfect example of the type of mobility solution that can connect people into those events. So we're making that a very clear connection to make sure that people are getting access to DRI investments. We are doing a ton of community engagement. We've already done work to talk to key, some of the key community stakeholders to understand mobility needs, mobility gaps, to understand how this system might work for folks, and for folks that need specific design or elements designed into the system. We're working with community members so that their input is received and influences the ultimate design of Project Mover. Our goals for public involvement or community engagement is first and foremost to develop trust with community. That is largely starting with partnering with community partners and paying them, and making sure that those community leaders are directly liaising with the community. We want to create a system that is co-built by the community, and these engagement activities are supporting those efforts. We're using these conversations to better understand needs, mobility problems, or even problems that are outside of transportation, and ensuring that the system can help solve some of those problems. And then finally, to identify how e-bikes might provide access to all the things that the village needs, or village residents needs. One of the final components of this project is that we're starting here in the village of Ossining, but we're really truly trying to make this a regional effort. So in the first 6 to 9 months of implementation, it would start in the village of Ossining. And those first 6 to 9 months are an opportunity for learning for other communities who potentially might have bike share expanded into their communities as well. We have gained letters of, or we've gained interest from Croton, Dobbs Ferry, the town of Ossining, and Terrytown. So they're going to be taking part in a multi-village incubator. And that is really intended to create a knowledge exchange where they can learn about what's happening in the village of Ossining, so that they can eventually replicate what has happened in the village, and create a truly regional system. So we're really excited to create the incubator and get that going in the next coming months. So we've gone through a little bit of an overview of what Project Mover is. We have yet to define what e-bikes are. So we're going to go into what e-bikes are and how e-bike share works. And then we're going to have about 45 minutes of conversation to talk about what you want out of this program or this project. So e-bikes are short for electric bicycles. These are electrically propelled using a battery. The battery is built into the bike. They go as fast as 20 miles per hour, but they can be governed, or the speed can be controlled to go less than that, depending on the part of the city. So that can be done through GPS. Most e-bikes have a range of about 20 to 30 miles, but the bikes that we're looking at right here in this, that you see in this image, they go up to 40 miles of range. So you can take it for a short trip, or you can take it for a longer trip, and you can be assured of having enough power to get you where you need to go. There's many reasons why communities across the country are looking to e-bikes to fulfill different transportation needs. I know this is at the bottom of the list, but first and foremost, it's a really fun way to get around. I know the first time that I tried an e-bike, I had a smile on my face. It was very fun to get around, and you start to realize what can be unlocked when you start to use an e-bike. You can ride a lot further. You don't sweat, or you tend to sweat less. In my case, it's easier to get around hilly terrain. It can create really short commutes from a time perspective. And especially in the context of Village of Ossining, it connects people to transit. So it creates a new way to get you to Metro North, both at the Ossining station as well as the Scarborough station. And then ultimately, and this is the point of the Clean Transportation Prize, it's an emissions-free transportation option. So it's a clean transportation option. It's good for the environment. It's also good for this community. I went into detail earlier about the two different options that we're looking at. It's the bike share system, which is represented on the left. These are located in places that you typically want to go, the destinations that might not be well served by transit. We're trying to connect that or bridge that gap. The second option is the lease to own program, where you ultimately will own your own e-bike. From the shared e-bike standpoint, it's very easy to use. You would first and foremost join the Acton app. You would create your own account, and you would load money into that account. And that account will be used to unlock bikes. And the unlock process is really easy, especially because we're hoping to have stations throughout the village within a very quick walk. You find a station, you unlock the bike with your code or your app, and then you have access to your bike. You pull it out and you ride away. Obviously, you're going to follow the rules of the road. If you feel comfortable riding a bike with a helmet, you'll have access to helmets. And when you're done with your trip, you go back to another station, you redock it, and you end your ride. So it's very easy. There are systems like this across the world, across the country, across New York, and it's a very seamless way to get around. While we haven't identified the precise cost to ride an e-bike, the way that it's going to be structured is in 3 different ways. One is that you would have a flat fare to unlock the bike, and then there's a per minute charge to move around the village, and then you stop getting charged once you dock the bike again. So that's one way to do it. The second payment option is using a pass system. So you either use a daily, a weekly, or monthly pass that gives you unlimited rides for that time period. So for folks that use or get a monthly pass and you ride the bike a ton, you're basically getting rides for cents on the dollar. And so the more that you ride, the cheaper it is per ride. The cool thing about this whole program with Project Mover is that we will be creating a subsidized or discount program. So it makes it even cheaper for folks that meet certain income eligibility requirements. That is to be determined, the actual income eligibility requirement levels, but it creates an even cheaper option for folks that have lower income and need some assistance. So that's Project Mover in a nutshell. This is a starting point. Nothing is fully set in stone, so we're really happy to start having some conversation. Before we get into our mentee poll to ask you a few questions, do you have any other questions for me or the team?
And there's some questions in the chat. If you'd like for me to read it, it's up to you. Actually, there's just one. Someone made a comment about the Spanish.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I can go through some of the questions in the chat. Oh, I don't see any questions in the chat. I'm sorry.
I see we have one question. How many docking stations will there be?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and we are kind of right in the thick of doing system planning. So we don't have a precise number at this point, but we think somewhere between 20 and 30, which from a density standpoint, that's a really dense system for a community of this size, and it is going to be very, very convenient. So when we say that we're trying to get people within a 5-minute walk, that's at worst, right? For most people, you're going to have a 1 to 2 minute walk or less to your closest station. Brian asked a question about whether this is going to be a dockless system. It is not going to be a dockless system. This would be fully docked. So you pick up a bike at a docking station, you end your ride at another docking station. So it keeps everything organized and removes any potential for clutter. Shay asked the question about whether there will be an age requirement to ride the bikes. That's to be determined, but for systems similar to this, you have to be 16 to ride a bike. And so one thing that we might want to talk about today in the breakout groups is if you are a certain age, you may be required to take a bike education class so that you are equipped with what you need to know to ride safely. Drissy would prefer a pass system. Great. For a pass payment system. Yeah, so and we can talk about that more within the breakout groups. So I would love to hear your perspective on why that's the preference. Brian, curious which streets will get bike lanes. Not sure if this has been discussed. Bike lanes are key to getting to your destination safely. Yeah, so we've done some work looking at what corridors or what streets could easily gain some bike infrastructure. Right now, we are thinking that there are some low speed and low volume streets that are off the main corridors that are perfect candidates for what we call neighborhood greenways. These are not bike lanes, but they are intended to discourage fast driving. In some cases, it discourages people from driving on the streets entirely. And it really builds in a sense of awareness that there are people are going to be biking on those streets. In addition to those elements, it makes there's going to be wayfinding so that people understand how you use a neighborhood greenway or those streets, and it helps people navigate to destinations that they want to go to. So right now we're not looking at bike lanes, but neighborhood greenways. And again, very early on in the planning process, but that's what we're thinking at this point. And Jeffrey, in terms of how extensive the network will be, we're looking at 2, 3, or 4 key corridors that will be parallel to major corridors or high traffic streets. Is the model of bike going to be the same as city bikes? No. So that is a different vendor and operator. The vendor and operator that we have partnered with for this project is Acton. They do have some bikes in New York City, but it's not part of the city bike system. Okay, and then Brian had a final question about neighborhood greenways eliminating parking. So no, there's no plans to eliminate parking with the development of a neighborhood greenway network. Sometimes in order to fit in a feature that keeps riders safe, you may remove one parking spot here and there, but at this point, there are no hard plans to actually remove parking. Jeannie, great question about community education. So what we had talked about earlier about bike education, that's one component of the education process. The other component is getting people prepared for bikes being used in the village. So that there would be definitely a community engagement component. It's probably focused more on drivers than anyone, but certainly it can be designed so that people that are walking understand that there's many bikes around. Okay, checking on the other group. It sounds like they are done or close to done.
They need a few more minutes, but they're almost caught up.
Okay. Okay. While we wait, are there any other questions? I'm surprised no one's asking questions about the lease to own program. And feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question.
I was going to say, you know, we're lucky enough to have this be in a meeting format. So anybody who wants to ask questions live and on the air, if you will, please feel very free to turn on your camera and or microphone, and we can start a conversation.
There's another comment from Brian in the chat.
Okay. Is Croton Avenue out of the question for neighborhood greenway? It's hard to be on the bike in the Croton Avenue shopping area. That's a good one. Maddie, do you want to take the question?
I sure can. So Brian, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the MOGO plan, Millwood, Ossining, Go. That is a plan that is sort of spearheaded by the town of Ossining, that also involves sections of the village of Ossining and Newcastle. And basically MOGO is something that is looking to connect. Evan, remind me, is it the east-west connection? We're looking to make east-west connections for bikers, where there are, you know, not very many in this part of Westchester County. So I will share in the chat what the town has put forth under MOGO, and basically that addresses getting from the intersection of Route 9 and Croton Avenue all the way over to the Taconic. So that is, you know, certainly something that we are discussing. It gets a little bit more difficult when you get into the village of Ossining, because the roads are narrow, it's pretty built out, but certainly something that's being considered. We're trying to figure out how we might be able to do that safely, and if not, what other side streets might be possible to incorporate to get folks down to the other side of Route 9. I hope that answers your question.
Jeff Schumacher has his hand up. If you'd like, Jeff, you can unmute and turn on your camera.
Yes, hi, sorry. Apologies in advance. I just got home and my dogs are a little rammy. So, but just a question about the overall management of the system. I know City Bike in the city, they're constantly moving these bikes around so that they're where you want them, and that docks aren't filling up, and that there are bikes, again, where you want them. Is that, what's the discussion around that? Just curious.
Yeah, so as part of Acton, so Acton would be the vendor and the operator as part of their duties. Rebalancing would be part of that. Some of that is built into the system design. So if you can't have a perfect system, right? But depending on where we end up putting the docking locations or docking stations, sometimes that system design solves for some of those rebalancing issues. We are pretty sure that a station at the Metro North station is going to get a lot of activity, and so that's going to probably take up a lot of the rebalancing activity for the day or for every operating day. But rebalancing is absolutely going to be part of the project's elements. Do you have any other questions specifically related to rebalancing or concerns?
No, you answered it. I can imagine that particularly in the evening, the bikes are probably going to go pretty quickly, and how that's going to be handled. But
Yeah,
you answered it. Thanks.
Great. Okay, so it sounds like the Spanish speaking room is done. They've started their Menti poll. I'm going to pull up our Menti poll. So if you haven't used menti.com before, it's very easy. There's two ways you can gain access to the poll itself. One is to go to menti.com. It will automatically take you to a landing page where you can enter in the code that you see before you, 15030861. Enter that in, and that'll give you access to the poll. The second option is to use your QR reader on your phone and snap a photo of the QR code that is on the screen, and that'll take you to the poll itself. And I'm going to share a different screen. Bear with me. Oh boy. There we go. Okay, so for the first question, we want to understand how you typically get around. What is the mode that you use most? And just to give us a sense of your preferences, but also what might be missing in terms of transportation options. So if you go to menti.com, the code is also on the top of the screen. This will give you access to the poll. Not surprising, there's a lot of people that walk. Ossining is a very walkable community, so that's not surprising. Who said other? I'm curious to hear what that other is. Don't be shy. I will venture to guess that that's skateboard, maybe.
I was going to say maybe rollerblade or bike.
Rollerblade could be.
Bike isn't on here.
Great. So a lot of people driving, a lot of people, some people walking, and there's other. Great. All right, we'll go to the next question.
Jeff has his hand up. He might be your other.
Oh, Jeff, are you the other?
Sorry. I'm trying to juggle too much here. I never took it down from before. Let me do that now.
Your arm's tired. I get it. All right. So as we had discussed, there's two main project elements. There's the bike share system, and then there's the lease to own program. When we talk about the bike share system, we're trying to understand from you all where it makes sense to put docking stations and where bike facilities like neighborhood greenways, where those are needed most. So would love to get a sense from you where those stations should be located and what corridor should have some bicycle improvements. Metro North, Main Street, anywhere in particular on Main Street? We want to get as specific as possible. Oh yeah, post office, definitely. The Arcadian, yep. Sounds like there's a lot of need for access to transit. The library seems very excited about this program. Chrissy, I saw your note about Scarborough Station too. Shops, Sparta Park, so access to recreation opportunities. Whoa, we're moving. What just happened? There we go. Supermarket, church, different institutions within the community. Any other thoughts about docking station locations? Keeping in mind, you know, we're thinking somewhere between 20 to 30 stations throughout the community. Mary Knoll, yes. Roosevelt Triangle. Access to schools. A lot of different communities are now using bike share as an opportunity to connect folks to school.
I see someone type Chillmark in the chat too. I think that's a good one.
Chillmark, yeah. Yeah, we're thinking about different ways to connect across village boundaries as well, which is exciting. Okay. All right, let's move forward. So the next question. So when you're thinking about bike share, we want to understand what's going to encourage you to use the system. Some of the ideas that we have are related to the cost, whether it's affordable or not, whether it's easy to use, it's intuitive, whether or not it's safe to ride and comfortable to ride, proximity to stations, so making sure that there's a station within quick walking distance, different options for payment, whether or not you are required to use a mobile phone app to actually gain access to the system, whether or not the system is connected to Metro North and other transit options. And then there might be other reasons why you'd be more encouraged to use the system. But what would you add?
Evan, we can't vote on this one. It says the voting is closed.
Interesting. How about now? Try it again. There you go. Safety seems to be riding to the top. In some ways, it's easy to use, and stations are where I need them, are, you know, different ways to say it needs to be really convenient. Also sounds like a lot of people would love to connect to rail via e-bike, which is, in my mind, is a no-brainer, but there's still a hill they have to get up, right? Right. Okay. Okay, so this not surprising. I think people want to be safe riding around, which is a no-brainer in my mind. So, and it's a major component of the work that we're doing here. Now moving on to the lease to own program. We want to understand if that's something that is of interest to you. So, you know, you may immediately be like, yes, this is it. This is what I want. You might need some more information, which we're happy to dive into in a bit. Shay, that's a really good point in the comments about where there isn't a lot of parking for cars. It's a no-brainer to put a bike share station there, because it's effectively a parking spot, but for bikes. Any other thoughts on interest in the lease to own program? All right. Let's move to the next question. So I had mentioned earlier that there is going to be some different types of subscriptions that you can subscribe to that gives you access to the bike share system. And then there might be, or there is definitely going to be some discount programs. And so we want to understand what's going to encourage you to opt into those subscription or discount programs. So ease of opting in, removing the number of clicks, making it intuitive to actually sign up. You want choice, it looks like, so different choices for discount offerings and subscription offerings. Easy to understand pricing seems to be rising at the top, and then comparable pricing to other different types of transportation options, or perhaps cheaper than those transportation options. Great. I think this is our last question. There's going to be many other touch points with this project, not only during the planning phase before the prize is awarded, but even after the prize is awarded, or if we are awarded the prize, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for engagement. And we'd love to hear from you how you want to be engaged moving forward. Surveys, yes. So we will be coming out with a survey very soon, actually in the next couple of weeks. So you'll be hearing from us, really the village and some of our community partners who are going to be advertising the survey. More virtual meetings, small group discussions. So our community partners are going to be facilitating small group discussions in the coming month. And then pop-up events. So we actually do have, it's not a pop-up event really, but it's an in-person event at the Earth Day event on the 23rd at the waterfront. So we hope that you check it out. We're actually going to have a couple of the bikes and a docking station, so you can see how it works. Great. Okay. Oh, there is one last question, and this is where you want to have this. Virtual is easy, right? But for in-person, what are some of the locations that you want to see some of these engagement events? Are there any locations that resonate with the community more than others? Stick to virtual. Schools, the rec center, the community center. We love the community center. Okay. A place we can test them. Yes. Need to be able to write it to understand it and get on board with it. Farmers market. Star Bethlehem. Star Bethlehem has signed on as a community partner as well, which is exciting. Local businesses. Any local businesses in particular that make a lot of sense? Okay, we can talk about that more in the discussion. Okay, so I think with that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to move into an interactive breakout session or discussion session. I think we're just going to keep this group as one group. The Spanish-speaking group is going to be in their own group, and I believe they've already started the conversation. So why don't we dive in to conversation. Do you see my screen? Great. Oops. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this link in the chat. We're going to talk about several different questions, but feel free to add whatever you want into the or onto the Miro board. We have some stickies already pre-created for you. All you need to do is click on a sticky, move it into the question board, and type in whatever you want. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, we'll also the team that's facilitating this will also be putting in notes as well. But to get us started, we want to talk about some of the challenges of getting around. This is, this is both in terms of just generally getting around, maybe it's because of the hills, but also what some of the challenges of getting around by bike might be. So this is the time to unmute yourself. Let's have a conversation about what it's like to move around the village, and what you think needs to be fixed or addressed as part of Project Mover. Jenny, I saw you when unmuted, so I gotta call you out.
Yeah, we've got a lot of aggressive driving right now. I think that's a real challenge for people on bicycles.
Aggressive driving. And is that become a part of the culture? Is this, during the peak? Is this all times of the day?
I think it's, I hate to put this out there because I'm really positive about this, so I don't want to seem like a downer. But I think that, there's total disregard for stop signs. So I sort of wonder how you manage that when you're on a bicycle and you're more vulnerable. I used to ride my bike to town. I don't do it anymore. It's gotten crazy. So I think that's an education issue. I'm not saying we can't come back from it, but it's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I think to your earlier point, Jenny, thinking about how to build that into the education program, so that people understand, hey, people are riding bikes now. So you got to be aware.
I kind of, just not to get stuck there, but I also feel like, we could do the same thing and protect some of our walkers at the same time if we did it in a comprehensive manner about non-motorized transportation.
Yeah. Drissy had mentioned roadway design as part of the challenge. So I think I think what you're saying, Drissy, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that it is the way that the roads are designed, it encourages people to drive fast. Great. Hills, certainly topography is something that we unfortunately cannot fix fully, but an electric bike does help, certainly. I am actually in Seattle, which is very hilly as well, and getting around by e-bike is a lot easier than a bike, or sometimes walking if I'm going for a longer trip. Fast taxis, so that's along the same lines as aggressive driving. What other challenges getting around that you experience, or friends or family that they experience? Brian, is there anything on the top of your mind or at the tip of your tongue?
I think I would just echo the aggressive driving.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that it's clear that we need to we need to put at the forefront in both our planning and the design of the program. I'm also seeing a note about potholes, so that can be literally jarring when you're riding a bike. Right. Anything else? Any other challenges
And then I just want to mention, and someone had posted it in the chat and then on the board also, Route 9 Road Diet is a project that the village is actually working on right now. Folks who have been here for a while will recognize this. It's been something that local community groups and economic development organizations have been recommending since I think like the 1990s, maybe even the 1980s. This is something that we've actually gotten a decent amount of traction. We're working with Senator Schumer and Gillibrand, as well as Representative Mondeir Jones, to hopefully secure some funding so that we are able to do that within the next 2 years, I would imagine. We've been working with a local planning firm. And for those who are unfamiliar with the meaning of a road diet, basically we'd be considering Route 9 between Cedar Lane and Cedar Place, which is just past the high school. And basically it would take what is now a 4-lane road to a 1 lane in each direction with a turning lane in the middle. So similar what you see on Route 9, just a few miles away from us in Tarrytown. So not only, would it, slow things down a little bit, give everybody a chance to, be a little bit more safe, but also, from an economic development perspective, it's much better. We could potentially provide more parking along both sides of Route 9. So please stay tuned. We're hoping that that's something we're going to be able to announce in the near future.
Thanks, Maddie.
That would change cycling in the village and across the Route 9 corridor significantly. So that's really exciting. Okay, well, why don't we move on to the next question? And this is really related to your thoughts on e-bikes. And Jackie, I don't know if you wanted to step in and ask some questions about this in particular, about how e-bikes might be used, but would love to hear some of your thoughts and your questions.
Sure. So when I talk to folks, I kind of did this at a meeting. And when I talk to folks, one of the questions I asked is, where do you enjoy, if you ride now, where do you enjoy riding? And would that translate to where you would enjoy e-bike riding?
Any thoughts there?
The other question I ask is where would you be nervous riding an e-bike? And Highland was one for everyone, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
Highland and certainly Route 9 without any bike lanes or facilities. Any thoughts on challenges riding an e-bike, or areas where it might not be really comfortable? Or
I would say going down a hill, some of the bigger hills, like if you're heading towards the train station. Just thinking about how that would go.
Yeah.
And there is some traffic when it's pick up and drop off time for the trains arrivals and departures, that the taxis are there, the people are there, and it sort of becomes a funnel.
Yeah, you're funneling a lot into a very small area. That's fair. Yeah, and if you're not used to riding an e-bike and you're going downhill, especially a really steep decline, it takes some getting used to. There's really great brakes on these bikes, but still need to get used to it. And so I think part of that
I think depending upon where the bike racks are, that there would be ways to circumvent that whole area of where you would go for the funnel, that you can sort of, so I guess signage would be important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a neighborhood greenway, that's part and parcel of what you get from a neighborhood greenway is better navigational tools. So I'm seeing going downhill, much traffic in the station area. Maybe kind of thinking about how better order and organization in that area to make sure that people are comfortable, but also understand where they need to park their bike when they're at their destination. Okay.
Also, anywhere around the schools, either during drop off or pickup, where you have a lot of distracted walkers because they're on their phones. You have parents trying to find their kid, pick up their kid. So that would be a tricky spot as well.
Yeah. I know we've talked a bit about, and you've noted that access to Metro North is a clear need or use case. Are there any other transportation needs that would be well served by e-bikes?
We do have buses that go directly into White Plains. And I believe that the buses, Maddie might be able to talk more to this, are becoming electric buses. So if there are certain areas where e-bikes can park and you can get there, that might help. There's the neighborhood that I live in, I don't live in Ossining right now, but there's busing that takes you to the train. So if there's a way to tie all that together, I think you can make it incredibly affordable and energy efficient.
Yeah, sort of that last mile idea. We do have, Jamie, I'm not sure I recall, maybe Jackie might know how many bus routes we have going through Ossining, but I think it's like 4. So we do have a lot of folks here who do use that form of public transportation. But again, you know, it tends to stick to the main corridors. So Croton Avenue, Highland Avenue, Spring Street. So if you do live a couple blocks away from that, this might be a fantastic option, you know, particularly if you're in a rush, like I often am.
Well, maybe that's one of the reasons you might use it is sometimes you might want to walk. Sometimes you are in a rush and you get somewhere really quickly, and an e-bike is a fantastic way to do that.
What about also, so we do have the North County Trail that is in the town, which is part of this MOGO plan that Maddie was referring to. There's definitely areas there in which docking stations could go, that if people were to come through that way, that they could ride their bike the rest of the way to work, so that they're not going into the downtown with a car and they're not part of that traffic, but they could leave their car in a certain area, but or ride up and down the trail, because I believe it goes straight into the city.
So almost like a park and ride situation, but with bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna add, the one challenge there is that one, what is it, 133 to the across 100. That is I mean, I ride that section on my bike. That is a really high traffic accident bike car accident area, and so that would have to be redesigned to make that safe.
I was thinking along going down North State Road and going through Briarcliff, as opposed to going up. Evan, if you've ever been up and down 133 on a bike, it's an interesting experience. Only a handful of people have had the pleasure of doing it.
Yeah, I got a chance to check that out. Yeah.
I think that Jackie, to your point, is a much better ride.
Yeah. Brian, I saw your comment about going to parks and nature trails. I agree. I mean, I think a lot of cities that have bike share systems, a key component of that is access to recreation. So I think that makes total sense. Yeah, connecting to beautiful nature. Love it. Love it. And Ginny +1, that one. Great. Well, if you have any other thoughts, please continue to add them to the board. I'm going to move to the next question. We've got 2 more. We want to understand, you had identified some challenges up above around getting around Ossining. We want to understand how you might design this project, both the e-bike system or the bike share system, the lease to own program. How would you design it to actually solve some of these challenges that you've identified? Is it about awareness? It sounds like that's a key need and a key driver. Is it the system design itself, where you put the stations?
I think where the docking stations go would kind of, what's the word, Lord? Would kind of determine how it's being used. So we'd have to be really smart about where they go, and using opportunities like this to see where people think they would be using it, and using that information to decide this is where a docking station would be because this is where the most people will use it. And then back to the redistribution of the bikes, that's going to be huge as well.
Yeah.
Metro North is going to be a big spot. Arcadia may be a big spot, but then there'll be smaller regions where people want to use it. So we have to make sure those are serviced as well.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Jackie, it's a good question, or it's a good statement, but I'm also curious to hear the perspective of your residents and constituents. What do they need in the design of this system or the design of this project?
They need something that's affordable. A lot of them do not have cars. They take buses and or they walk. So they need something that's going to not break the bank for them, but get them places they need to go. I know folks that take the bus to work, even within Ossining, because they're at one side of Ossining and maybe they work at the schools that are in another side of Ossining. So they need something that gets them there cheaper, easier, because the bus is infrequent. It's not like, you know, it's going to be there at 8:05 and you're that kind of thing. So something like a bike where you know you can walk 2 minutes, you can get your bike, you can get it to work, and you'll know what your commute is, and your commute will be much shorter and much more efficient. Yeah,
and it's not even about one or the other, right, Jackie? It's almost like redundancy, like depending on when you need to go, when you've gotten out of an appointment or whatever, you just want to go, right?
Right.
So that's the bus or an e-bike.
Right. So you're trying to get to, you're getting off work and then you have to pick up the kids kind of thing, and you need to get places quickly or stop at the supermarket on your way home, those kinds of things. If you could do that quicker and not have to take the bus and wait for the bus and like ride the bus, you could just go from A to B very quickly. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so affordability, convenience from a location standpoint. What other elements need to be designed into Project Mover to solve for some of the mobility challenges you've talked about?
People brought up a lot about just education. There's some fear about the places they would need to go riding those places. So, you know, back to some of the comments that we've heard about education on bike safety, bike lanes, those things like that. I think people would have to see that and feel safe to have this as a viable option.
I wonder, and Maddie, maybe you know the answer to this, whether there are studies about in Ossining who commutes from where to get a sense as to where those patterns are. So we might take some of the traffic density down. And also to satisfy what Jackie was talking about, people who are commuting within the village to work.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Ginny. Unfortunately, I don't know if we have data about intra-village commuting. We certainly know, some of the communities that a lot of our residents do work in. And so that was part of, when Evan talked at the beginning about our outreach to the incubator communities, our goal had really been to link many of the communities that many of our residents do travel to for work, so that potentially, when we win the prize, there will also be infrastructure in those communities that matches what we have here. So for example, we know that Terrytown is a place that a lot of folks who live in the village travel for work, and they actually signed on to be one of our incubator communities. So we are hopeful that when this works out, that's something that they can avail themselves of.
Shay or Jissy? Any thoughts on what you'd like to see designed into this program, this project? Or Alicia, how about you? Okay.
We have a comment there from Brian. Evan, I don't know if you saw.
Yeah, I just saw that popped up. Yeah, so lowering speed limit on certain streets that have greenways, two-way cycle tracks in certain areas that may be a way to better maximize space. I don't disagree with you there, Brian, but I don't know if we're going to have the funding as part of this project to do that kind of network improvement Protect the greenways by bollards. So some level of vertical elements. Makes sense. Would a local pricing option be, oh, I see. A local pricing option be viable for affordability? So if you live in the village of Ossining, you get some sort of discount. That is something that has been done in other communities as well. So it's absolutely an option. Can you give me more detail on what you mean by that type of pricing option? What would that look like? Is it more just a different price, or is it like half the price? If you can provide evidence, a bill of mail with name, receive a 10% off per ride. Great. Yeah, I love that idea. It really does show that this truly is, although other people from throughout Westchester County, the region, are going to be using this, this really truly is a system for the village. Shay asks, what would this look like for people in the town of Ossining? Yeah, so we've already had some good conversations with the town. And as we had mentioned earlier, they are one of the incubator cities. So they're going to be doing some learning as the system is rolled out in the village of Ossining, and with the intent that this would then expand into the village. So we're hoping to get a similar, if not the same kind of level of service that you would see in the village of Ossining. A very proximate and convenient access to bikes, e-bikes.
Might there be a possibility of like restriping, or at least indicating, like narrowing some of the lanes to slow down speed, or perhaps just, I don't know what kind of visuals you can create on the road that would alert people, because you're saying you thought the two-way of the bollards might be more challenging in terms of accommodating inside the budget, but paint's not that expensive, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's a question for the village. I think ultimately the MOGO plan is the North Star from a bike network standpoint. What we would likely be able to do in terms of accommodating new types of infrastructure is purely on the safe parallel neighborhood routes. And so just making it as safe and comfortable as possible on those streets. Let's move on to the next question. And again, you can continue adding to the board. You have access to the link. We're going to go through this last question, and then we're going to do a quick wrap up with some next steps. So this question is really about the design of the bicycle itself. And so, there's some level of customization that we can get to through this project. But what we really want to understand is, how should the bike be designed to serve the many different types of trips that could be taken using an e-bike? We give the example of work trips, shopping trips, but there's many other types of trips that you can take. Brian had mentioned very eloquently how recreation and access to trails and nature is a clear and obvious use case. But how should the bike be designed?
Some of the feedback I got was for folks who don't have cars, if they're using this for like the supermarket, could there be some kind of extra storage or some way to hold their groceries or whatever they're getting when they're buying stuff? Another comment I got was, if you have a child, is there going to be some kind of child seat ability, capacity? So those are some of the things that people were saying, and also the comfort of the seat.
Oh yeah, especially for people that aren't used to riding bikes. Yeah, absolutely.
So not a Peloton seat.
Yeah, exactly.
I did that for you, Jamie.
I'm not going to speak for Acton, the vendor, but I would assume that they're going for comfort, is my guess. But these are great suggestions. So, you know, ability to store your own personal goods or things that you've bought so you can carry them around by bike, the ability to carry your children by bike, which makes total sense. Any other product features or kind of safety features maybe that should be designed directly into the bike?
I know that we've talked about this offline, but what about the height of the seat so that the people that are tall can ride properly and the people that are not tall can ride properly, because it's a big deal when you can't touch the ground when you come to a stop. So it's a safety thing. So something to think about.
Absolutely, Jamie. Drizzy had mentioned whether there's going to be specialized bikes at some docks. Oh, I see. So cargo bikes. So right now we are looking at one type of bike. There may be an iteration that is for folks that might be a little smaller in stature that we're going to look into. But at this point, they're not going to be cargo bikes as part of it. That being said, if you have your own cargo bike, you would be able to park your bike at the bike racks, not the docks, but the bike racks that would be built as part of this program. And then final comment from Brian, a small stand for your cell phone. Oh, right. So you can, for navigation purposes, love that idea. A lot of bike share systems now accommodate that. So it's becoming a much more standard, safer hands-free design. Great idea, Brian.
Thank you so much. I feel so strongly about that one. Being fairly new to the village, I can't see myself as someone who's never ridden a bike in the village, but I want to. I can't navigate the village like without, holding my hand and my phone in my hands and then going through the hills. I just think that one's so important for the topography and being aware of the drivers in the streets and pedestrians. I think it would be a big win.
Makes total sense. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. We are gonna start wrapping up. Unless you have any other thoughts related to the design of the bike, you can either add that in yourself or you can speak up now. There will be other opportunities to engage and have conversations about this, especially as you start to ingest all these ideas and start to think about what you really want out of the system. We'd love for you to come back and have more conversations in the future.
So we have 5 minutes left, but there will be more meetings and other getting together for all of you if you have more questions, but feel free to wrap it up or quick questions. But there will be future meetings. Correct. Sorry, I was speaking in English. Perdón, va a haber, son 5 minutos que se queda de la junta, pero va a haber más oportunidades de reunirse y poder expresar más preguntas.
Great, thanks, Maria. All right, so I'm gonna move it back to the presentation deck. We're gonna do a quick wrap up with next steps. Bear with me while I try to find the right screen.
And you'll just give a pause so Maria can support you in these wrap ups, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, thank you for your time today and your insights and thoughts. We loved hearing from you. This is not the end of the journey. There's going to be many other opportunities to engage and have conversation. María.
Muchas gracias por haber participado en esta junta y van a haber más información, la en persona, juntas en la comunidad, probar las bicicletas, y otras fases 2. Pero muchas gracias por haber participado con sus preguntas y sugerencias.
The next opportunity to engage is an in-person community meeting, which will include a test ride of the bicycles. That will be on April 23rd, coming up in a couple weeks. And that's going to be located on the waterfront during the Earth Day event.
El próximo evento va a ser en abril 23 en persona y enfrente de la fuente para que vean las bicicletas y platicar en comunidad en persona.
We will also be having community conversations that will be held by our community partners. So you will be hearing from them very soon. And then, oh, go ahead, Maria.
Sorry. También va a haber otras personas de la comunidad que les van a explicar otros aspectos de este proyecto fase 2.
And then we're going to have a survey, both a paper survey and a web survey that's going to be available to you in the next 2 weeks.
Y en unas 2 semanas van a dar en forma en papel y también electrónicamente preguntas para que ustedes contesten con sus opiniones y respuestas, sugerencias en 2 semanas.
From then, we're going to be continuing to finalize our proposal to NYSERDA. And that proposal will be submitted in June, and we will know by, I believe, fall of 2022 if we have been selected.
Van a someter la propuesta en junio y van a esperar un tiempo para saber la respuesta si fue aceptado o no también.
And then if we are successful and we win the prize, the program will launch in spring of 2023 with a variety of planning and engagement activities between winter 2022 and late spring 2023.
Si ganan el concurso y aceptan su propuesta, pronto en esta primavera del año 2023 empezarán a funcionar estas bicicletas, este proyecto, pero van a empezar a oír desde el invierno de 2022 para saber los resultados.
And finally, after the bike share program and the lease to own program are launched in spring of 2023, the system would expand to the incubator communities in winter of 2024.
Y después también se explicarán las opciones de renta, también con opción a comprar, y va a estar funcionando en el invierno del 2024.
And that's it for our time. Maddie, do you want to say any final words before we head off?
I want to thank everybody for such amazing and really thoughtful feedback. Like Evan spoke about in the presentation, this is a system for you. So while we would be very excited to win this grant under any circumstances, it is critical that we be getting as much public feedback as possible to make sure that not only is this a cool feather in our cap, but also something that really meets an unmet need here in the village of Ossining, and also in our incubator communities. So I want to thank the team from Nelson Nygaard, from Eno, from Acton. I want to give a shout out to Executive Director of IFCA, Jackie Shaw, who's one of our community partners working very hard to ensure that this system reflects what our community is looking for. And I hope to see everybody down at the waterfront on April 23rd. You can come and visit us at the booth, learn a little bit more about this and other projects that the town and village are working on, and enjoy a great day by the waterfront with local food and drinks and all kind of artisanal vendors. We look forward to seeing you there. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day or great evening.
Thank you, Sam.
Muchas gracias.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
There we go.
All right.
Is that a pretty standard turnout for you, Maddie?
That was a good turnout for us.
That's a good turnout. Oh, good.
Yeah, I did not want to spook everybody, but Jamie and I were kind of like, when we were talking about it the other day, Evan was like, yeah, like the breakout rooms, there's gonna be 5 breakout rooms. And I was like, should I tell them no?
Tell us next time.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with, well, you know what, you never know, because like Jamie said, when we had police reform, we had 70 people, which was, you know, unprecedented. So, you know, you never know. I think this was a really good turnout. I'm curious how the conversation went in your room, if